And in that bit as well, I've talked about things like metaphor and, what kind of metaphors do you use and how they shape how you see the world, because I have trained in an interesting methodology called symbolic modelling, which I won't talk about in a lot of detail now, but essentially it's understanding that, often by understanding the metaphors we use, we can get a sense of, how we see the world. And if we can shift those metaphors a little, we can make a shift quite deep level. So it's quite interesting, and I talk about that a little bit in the book.
In Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday, the 28th of January 2024. This is your host, Nigel Creaser. And today I've got Felicity Dwyer, the connection crafter. Second part, stop again. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links, in the way that it's set up, that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Clean, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's varying different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again, it's nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy.
And it can be tricky on email. I mean, I think a few things on email. I think this could be helpful on email. You can look at the style of someone's communication. And I know that if someone writes a very direct email, I'm not going to write back with, "Oh, hi, how was your weekend?" I will reply in kind. Whereas if someone starts with more of a sort of friendly, like, "Oh, I hope you," I'll tend to mirror back a bit how people write. I completely agree with you about picking up the phone. If you've got a difficult conversation, or if there's something that you're really not sure about, it is far better to pick up the phone. And the other thing that's really helpful is if you are angry or riled up by an email, do not send it. You might type an angry reply of just trying to get everything out of your head, but do not send it. Sleep on it, or at least come back to it after you've had a cup of tea. And
I've got a few in my drafts folder.
Yeah, it's not worth building on conflict. And if you can see conflict is starting, because of course it does, however careful you are, things can. But if you see conflict has started, then have a conversation about it at that stage, because if you're prepared to intervene early and think, okay, I think there's a misunderstanding here, shall we just have a chat about this at an earlier stage, it just stops it becoming too huge. And you may never agree, but at least you've got the respect of saying to the other person, let's see if we can work this out. And I think respect is really important within a team. And something I like, I'm quite influenced as well, and I've trained with Nancy Klein in the work Time to Think. I don't know if you've come across Time to Think and the thinking environment. I think it's really, really helpful for, just for meetings in particular. A lot of her work is based around meetings and how you work with people. And the thinking environment is essentially a set of components or principles that help encourage thinking. And essentially, let's take meetings as an example. Her argument is whatever the purpose of the meeting, and of course, many and varied, fundamentally something you want in all meetings is people to think. Even if it's just a quick briefing meeting, you want people to be engaging with what you're asking them to do. But if it's a meeting that's about, discussing ideas or potentially where you've got disagreements, people seeing things differently, you want to create an environment where, as far as possible, people bring their best thinking to the table. I'm not going to run through all the components, but it's things like, part of it is attention. It's giving people, the quality of your attention, which is the really listening. Another component that I think is quite helpful is this one of equality. And the idea is everybody being equal as thinkers. So even in a hierarchical situation where some people have greater decision-making power, for example, everybody is capable of thinking for themselves and contributing. So it's that, that respect you accord people. And the way you do this in quite practical ways can be things like building rounds into your meeting, so everybody's invited to speak. If you've got just a free-for-all discussion, then research has shown that, a minority of people will take up most of the airspace, and, the bigger the group, proportionally the smaller number of people who will take up the airspace and things like this. So having some sort of ground rules for meetings so that everybody gets a chance to be heard, really important. So that's another one. So it's about providing everybody in the team with a chance to be heard. Another thing that can be quite helpful, I think, in a team is if you feel you've got a bit too much consensus or a bit too much groupthink going on, is actually invite different views. It's okay, we've heard this and this suggestion. Has anyone got a different view? So, proactively inviting different views, and again, treat views with respect. And if it's not helpful, it might not be helpful, but somebody has spoken up and contributed. So it's at least getting different views on the table.
It's funny, I think, and it's exacerbated with the remoteness of a lot of stuff these days, is you do that meeting where you have, and I always remember it was always terrible when we used to just have conference call phones, and the people on the end of the phone, you forgot about them. They were not that engaged anyway, and trying to get anything out of people with opinions is quite difficult. And then you'll have those quieter individuals, and then you'll have the gobby ones like me that are happy to say whatever they think. And it's that bringing of those. Now we're in virtual scenarios. You're not looking at someone's eyes. Yeah, you can't. If they put the video on, even then it's not the same. And getting those people who are a little bit disengaged in that meeting, in that conversation, what sort of things can you do? I know you can kind of go, right, what's your opinion? What do you think? Have you got anything to add? As two closed questions there, isn't it? It's kind of leaving open questions, but it's what kind of things would you recommend? Because I know it's the creeping death sometimes on like an update call, where it's just like feels like you're pulling teeth to try and get people to engage with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think there's a few things. I think firstly, it's about the preparation. And I would say, again, it depends on the context, but good preparation isn't asking people to read masses and masses of stuff, because quite likely half the people won't have done it and people won't be on the same page. But I think that something that's really useful in preparation is thinking about what the questions that we're going to ask, so that people have got a chance to think about some of the questions in advance. In fact, one of Nancy Klein's tips is to phrase the agenda items in the form of questions that we're going to answer. Yeah. I think when it comes to agendas as well, if you've got just a standing agenda that you do every time, it can get stale quite quickly, or parts of it cannot be relevant. So really think about what's the purpose of the meeting, and therefore what is an agenda and a format that could work. So, if you've fallen into a bit of a habit and you feel like it's not working, take a step back to the basic. What are we actually trying to do in this meeting? I think a couple of things as well. Sometimes if you've got maybe a question, give people a couple of minutes to maybe think about it and make some notes, because that will give people who like a bit more processing, maybe more of the S and C types in a meeting, a bit of time to actually think what they're going to say rather than putting them too much on the spot. The other thing I would say, if you have got an update round, I think it is, depending on the numbers, of course, I think it's good practice to invite everybody to contribute, but also okay in some contexts. If people haven't got anything, they could just pass. It's not about pushing people that they have to say something. It's more about making sure that people aren't overlooked, and you're not having a situation where it's always the same more extrovert people who are contributing and everybody else is not. Numbers of people at meetings as well. What's the best number? If you've got quite a few things to cover, is it better to have sort of smaller meetings and just have the key people in the room or on the call? Shorter, sharper meetings are usually better than long ones, even if you've got a couple of, maybe need to split it into a couple of meetings.
It's interesting because there's a couple of things you're saying there is like, I think about I suppose I look at it and it's kind of trying to do things quickly and easily. You look around the table and you ask it for everyone to give a contribution and one person never contributes, say. Well, they've given the opportunity to contribute. If they're not engaged and they're not contributing, I suppose the thing is that needs to be a one-to-one conversation with that individual about their contribution, doesn't it? That's the step that I would have to take, is go to each of these people and say, right, I'm concerned that I'm trying to give you a voice. You're not taking that opportunity to have that voice in the meeting. What is it that's stopping you? And I suppose that out of the back of that, there could be conflict with someone else. It could be even something where, well, I was shut down once before, therefore why bother? Because John always shuts me down. Maybe something from 10 years ago. You just don't know, do you? And asking that, I suppose it's spotting that and that consciousness of what's going on and listening and trying to understand why that person isn't engaging. But again, it's that, and that's the kind of thing is where I think goes back to our first point when we were talking about that new manager thing of the task, the team and the individual. It's being, if you're focusing on, you've got to have the time to do those interactions with people as a manager. Therefore, you've got to make room to be able to go, I need to go and talk to that person and understand why they're not involved. And if all you're doing is operational and running the business rather than managing the people, that's not going to work, is it?
It's not. And I think obviously one of the barriers to having those one-to-ones can be the idea it might take a lot of time. And it doesn't necessarily, can be quite a short check-in, quick piece of feedback, just, keep it focused on a topic. But just having those one-to-one conversations is where you build the relationship, really. And so I think it's definitely worth doing. And it doesn't need to be, a full hour one-to-one every time. It can just be a check-in. And it's working virtually. You don't get some of those, management by walking around type of opportunities. So you might need to create them, but just keep it quite brief. And, we sort of so used, aren't we, to putting meetings in hour or half hour sort of slots, but they don't need to be that long. You could do shorter ones. In fact, it's really good to finish meetings before the hour, say, so that people they're not going back to back meetings, because it's probably partly as well why people don't engage if they just haven't had any time between meetings. So that's another thing as well, thinking, it doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be half an hour. It can be, a shorter period of time.
Yeah, I'd see that. I think it was last year that Outlook, Microsoft, if people use the Outlook, there was a setting you can put it in there now that it doesn't default to half-hour meetings or 15-minute or hour meetings. It knocks 5 minutes off for every one. So if you book a half-hour meeting, it's 25 minutes. And the pop-up saying this meeting's going to end in 5 minutes comes at 20 past. So if you manage it and follow it to that level, you do that by default. And I'm starting to, before I wasn't there originally, but I'm starting to feel I am more often treating that as it does end at 25 past rather than at half past. And I find that really useful. way of trying to do it. I did try doing it the other way, where I was going to start meetings 5 minutes later so that people had a chance coming out of other meetings. But then everyone with Teams pop up saying, "Oh, this meeting's starting." Everyone joins early anyway, so it's kind of defeating the object. But I think that whole thing of getting the team engaged, getting people engaged in meetings. No one wants to be in meetings, but there seems to be more meetings. It is a big difficulty for, again, and what you do as a manager, you're trying to go, I don't want my team sat in meetings all day because they won't be able to get any work done. But I need them in meetings in order for work to get done. And you've got that difficult conundrum. I know there was one where we'd have 4 streams of work running, and we needed to have a stand up and on each of those streams. Now we could have one big one, which lots of people would have had come in and gone or whatever, but there were some people who we needed for all of those meetings, and they were going to meeting after meeting after meeting. But because of their role, it was spread across quite a few things. To them, it felt like they were in meetings all the time. But we still needed them there, because if they weren't there, the teams that needed their expertise wouldn't get that expertise. But if we tried to do it all in one go, that meant that we had to bring everyone. Yeah, it's difficult. I don't think there's one answer. It's never going to be perfect, is it? Let's just go for it.
It's not. And it does always come back to, what's the purpose of this meeting? Does it need to be a meeting? I mean, sometimes it does. And not losing that stepping back.
Yeah, another meeting that could have been an email kind of conversation.
Yeah,
but then no one would have read the email. That's the problem, isn't it?
You know, if they need to provide a piece of information, could you record the first time they do it, and then essentially play it in future and have people, okay, any questions, we can feed them back? And I mean, I don't know if that would work. I've just come up with it at the top of my head, but it's it's always worth thinking creatively about other ways you could do it.
Yeah, and I think we don't take the time to do that, do we? Sometimes it is a case of, if you have got it's quite often I'll see stuff where it's coming out and they're kind of all hands kind of type things, and I'm like, can you record it? And it gets recorded, but it isn't default recorded. But some more of them are getting like that now, because then I will not go to it, because if I don't need to, if I'm just consuming, I'm not contributing, I can pull that down. I can run it at 1.5 speed, and that information I can gather quicker than I would be if I was on live, or I can put it once in front. You can do those sort of things where you can speed up the consumption of a lot of stuff, or with the auto transcription stuff that goes on, skim read this transcription, which you can skim read a transcription and 10 times as fast as you can watch the video, and you can go through, that bit, click, play that bit of video, or that's a bit I need to listen to. But I think we're still in that point where we're not quite got all those. Just thinking, I'm looking there with your book in the background there, and we've touched on it a little bit. And we've been going nearly 50 minutes now. Tell us a little bit about why bother writing a book? It's not easy. It's not simple. There's a lot of emotional investment in it, and doubt and things like that with every book that we write. So why, and what are the benefits in there? Give us a little outline of it, etc.
Oh, right. Thank you. Yes. Well, I suppose the why, wanting to try and pull together, I think, a lot of what I've learned over the years into one place. So, a project that would be quite satisfying, but would also provide a resource. So it is designed to be quite a practical resource. And the sort of idea that helped me put it all together was this structure, which I've called, connecting in 3 dimensions, which is essentially this idea that you start with connecting with yourself, and it's with every conversational relationship you have, at work and outside, you are always part of that dynamic.
Yeah.
You are, and you are the only person who can make a change in yourself and how you react with people. So it starts with really asking you, and this bit of the book's had quite a lot of love actually, this idea that you connect with yourself. And I've started off with just connecting with the present moment, because when our minds are in the future or the past, we're not there with ourself and how we're reacting in the moment. And I've looked at things. I look a little bit about values, because I think that's so important. The stories you tell yourself. And in that bit as well, I've talked about things like metaphor and, what kind of metaphors do you use and how they shape how you see the world, because I have trained in an interesting methodology called symbolic modelling, which I won't talk about in a lot of detail now, but essentially it's understanding that, often by understanding the metaphors we use, we can get a sense of, how we see the world. And if we can shift those metaphors a little, we can make a shift quite deep level. So it's quite interesting, and I talk about that a little bit in the book.
Kind of like self-talk, isn't it? That sounds a little bit like the fact that the stories that you're telling yourself, you're telling others, you're telling yourself, aren't you? Sounds like.
Yeah, and it's recognizing that they are just stories, and because we've talked before, haven't we, on this conversation about self-awareness, and I've used the phrase in that the observing self, which is taken from ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, or acceptance and commitment training, which is an evidence-based psychology, but it has some interesting ideas in it, and one of them is this, you can connect with a part of yourself that can kind of observe yourself and say, okay, so I'm thinking that, but that is just a thought in a way. There could be another way of thinking. So you can have those mindset shifts, but you can be connected with yourself, and you can notice and think, there's this sort of noticing and naming approach. Okay, notice I'm thinking or having the thought that this is a difficult person. Okay, I notice I'm having that thought. That is just a thought. So what would be a more productive thought? And when it comes to sort of changing your mindset or thoughts, you need to change it to something that's believable. So it's like, okay, I might not suddenly say, oh, this person is, I love having a conversation with this person, because it's not true. But you can say, okay, I'm going to prepare for this conversation. I am going to ask myself, what's the best way of communicating with this individual based on how I've observed? What can I do to make likelihood of success? So, you can change the way you think without having to sort of say something that isn't true. You need to, once you've noticed you're having a thought isn't productive, you can say, okay, what would be a better way to approach this conversation? Yeah. Is this making sense?
Yeah, it does. It's kind of that getting behind your own assumptions, isn't it?
Yeah, and it starts with noticing them. And when you notice that you're thinking in a certain way, and it's how you think, but there are other ways of approaching potentially the conversation, or are other ways of seeing a situation. And of course, one of the ways you can get those different perspectives is by asking people in a two-way. But you can also, we all have different parts. We all have, the part of ourselves that can be quite calm and think about something. We also have the part of ourselves that can get quite riled up. So, just recognising that, if we're calm and sort of look at what we're doing from that, just that more the observing self. I like that phrase, because it is just that part of us that is a little bit calmer and is not too caught up in emotions. So it's just taking a step back, really. So that's the first aspect. The second part is connecting with. So that's more the interpersonal communication. So I start with listening, because I think that's really fundamental. I've got quite a lot on questions and how to ask great open questions. A little bit on non-verbal communication. I talk about DISC in that section and how you can adapt your style. So it covers, a range of different approaches, but always from this core idea that it's about connecting and listening and treating other people with respect. Got a bit on assertiveness too, how you can step up, stand up for yourself. And the third part is looking at the networks and communities that you're part of. I've called that connecting beyond. So it's basically, what am I part of that is bigger than me? And on a practical level, that could be things like mapping your network, whether from that's a career perspective, or however you want to do it. So I think for project managers and, anyone, it's really useful to think, am I connected with the right people? Am I part of worthwhile professional networks? Am I part of networks with people maybe outside my immediate professional or sector who could bring in interesting ideas? Have I got enough people that I can actually talk to if things are getting tough? So it's thinking about that, really, your support structure and how you contribute, but also how what can nurture and support you. And they're
Interesting.
all linked.
Yeah, that networks side of it kind of draws again to our sort of new into roles and the changed approach where we've got hybrid working in organisations, and how I've been in my organisation about 19 years now. I've been in the industry for 25 years. I've got a lot of connections. I've got a wide network, both internally to my organisation. I know I can pick the phone up pretty much any situation. I'll find someone who knows someone in my organisation to find out who I need to talk to. But some of the new joiners into the organisation, whether they be new to career or new to the organisation itself, don't have that network. And the way they would have built that network is bumping into people at a coffee shop, bumping into, at a coffee machine, chatting to someone they do know, and someone says, "Oh, have you met?" Oh, and build that and bumping in that way. Whereas now you've got to manufacture those situations, and as a give point of view from us as that's more experienced and more with the wider networks, it took me a while to realise why there was any value in me going into the office, because I could pick up the phone to anyone, I can get stuff done without being face to face, because it's a trek and so on. But then it was pointed out to me it's not about me. Very, very rarely is, and it's about the fact that rest of the organisation, we will lose that connectivity, we will lose that sense of belonging, and people will come into the organisation and feel, and any organisation now, there is that chance of loneliness, isolation, not feeling part of the organisation. And then in all industries and all businesses, we're going to get that churn of people, because we will be seeking that belonging, because that's what you do. You want we're all what they're called, I've got a gang, clans, whatever it is. My brain's going on that. We seek that community, don't we? And if we don't find it, you'll try and find it somewhere else. Whereas it used to be, you'd end up going to work, you'd work with people, you work with your team, and that becomes your community, for good and for bad. But it becomes that community, and then there's a bit of a wider community, but that first community is much harder to do. And I've seen it since COVID, that creation of those communities where you've changed organisation, moved the organisation around, put some new people together in a new team. It's taken much longer to get them feeling like they're a team working together.
Yeah.
So that networks is amazing.
It's really interesting, and it links back to psychological safety as well, this idea of belonging, and feeling excluded, not feeling part of something, can in some ways be as painful as physical pain. We really do. We are social beings. We really need to feel part of something. And so for a project management team lead, and it is really important to help people feel part of a team. And I just think a few things. I mean, I think bringing people together, even if it's not day to day, if people don't need to be face to face day to day, something that I personally think, with just coming from the perspective of someone who's been involved in training, is that actually some good training courses as a really good way to bring people together, because you're learning together and people love it. I've found, I do a lot of my work online now, but people still want me to come in and deliver a course, because they like getting together, they like the opportunity to learn and have conversations, and almost, again, taking that step back. I mean, I think this is a bit of a theme as well, whether it's about meetings or whether it's about your own thinking, taking that step back out of the day-to-day and working on challenges or problems, whatever the topic of the the training is, but applying that to work. So, how might this model, help me to manage the situation better? And I think that can be really helpful. The other thing I would say, even if you've got, say, team meetings that are group meetings, can you use the breakout rooms and actually have some one-to-one conversations or, three-way conversations in those as well? Because if it's all in a big group, some people get a bit lost. But if you can have some breakouts, it's surprising, even if you just, 5 to 10 minutes to get maybe 2 or 3 people to talk about something as a small group, which you might do in a training course, but you can use similar techniques in meetings as well. It just helps people to start to get to know people. And so I think one of the things you really need to be doing and asking yourself as a team leader as well is, how can I help people feel connected to the different people in the team, the different individuals, and trying to build in ways to do that are also productive and linked to work as well. It doesn't have to be completely separate team away day that people can be a bit cynical about those. It's more about, how can I find ways to build that in that are also working towards the task, but they're also working towards the individual development and the team dynamic. You can kind of get all keeping that model in mind as but what will help develop all three at the same time.
Yeah, I'd like that, and it's as you say, that face-to-face training thing. I've always found that I'm one of these people that, surprisingly enough, when it's a face-to-face training thing, I like being there. I like sitting near the front. I like getting involved. I'm annoying to the instructor usually because I'm quips and jabbering away. But I find the energy in the room of something like that gives me energy. It re-energizes me. It gives you that breakaway. And I am a person who goes all in those scenarios. I'm out of the office. It's very rare that I'll be dealing with stuff going on when I'm on something like that. I'll pick it up later. And I see other people who are in between every break, they're on the phone. At lunch, they've gone off, they're eating on. And for me, that face-to-face training is more than the things you're being taught. You learn so much from other people's points of view. And then if you've got a team together and you're chatting about the stuff you've gone there, that builds those bonds of those teams, because they're going, well, even if they disagree entirely with the training that's going on, they're bonding over that training being different and they're understanding each other more. And I think that it's a fantastic point to make there, is having those face-to-face. And I'm thinking we've got stuff we're thinking about in the future for next year. And it's finding excuses to get everyone together. It's what there, and it's kind of all rather and encouraging people to do that. Now, sometimes you say, well, we're going to do face-to-face. We have to do face-to-face. If you shape the nature of that training to be face-to-face, that means that it wouldn't work virtually. But it's still hard to get people to come in and do that, because there's always someone who's, again, it's individuals, isn't it, where they go, I'm too busy. I can't take time away from the job. And they can, but they just choose not to, really. And they don't, the consequences of the taking that time away, they're not willing to accept. I'm just realising the clock's just ticked over onto an hour. I told you we'd talk for a while, didn't I? The book, obviously, those 3 parts of that book sounds fascinating, to be able to give that inward thinking, that connections for what you need to do in that wider connection. I love the way that you've done that. I love the idea of compartmentalizing those, and that give back to the communities and things as well, where, as you say, when you're networking wider, and how they influence, but how you can exert influence on those environments as well, because by exerting something onto those networks, you'll get something back off those. And I've found that myself, when you contributed, you get something back. And it's like with being volunteering with the PMI. I've got some really good friends that from 20 years ago, that just because we were volunteering on PMI and helping run events and things like that. And it's kind of, it does feed back in different ways to the way that maybe you think it would. But again, it'll feed back negatively on environments that you maybe should choose to step away from. or limit your exposure to. But thinking about all that in the book and all that sort of thing, was there anything that we haven't discussed, because obviously there's rabbit holes we've gone down, that you would have liked to have mentioned either about the book or about the things that you're doing, or the maybe future events or anything like that?
No, I feel we have covered quite a lot. I mean, my core message, I think, when it comes to interpersonal communication, is about that connecting with people. So it's, yes, you've got some kind of message you want to communicate, and it may be task focused, but actually taking a bit of time to connect with somebody, to listen, to understand. So I've mentioned that before, but that I suppose is my core message. Particularly if you're very task focused, clearly we're all at work to complete task, deliver the project, whatever it might be. But the way you do that is actually to develop your ability to work with the people that are on the project. And that's, that fundamentally is what will contribute to this success. Once you're a manager, what matters is your ability to work with people. And the starting point for that is understanding yourself and being open to what others are had to contribute.
Yeah, that openness. You say being open is so important, isn't it? So if people want to find more information, carry on the conversation, etc., what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Okay, I think there's a couple of ways. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm quite easy to find. Felicity Dwyer. I think that's just my LinkedIn name. So, do find me there, connect with me, maybe mention the podcast if you want to connect. The other thing, I do have my own website, which is felicitydwyer.com. So I've got information there about, some of the courses and things that I offer. I do offer one-to-one coaching as well. And of course, if you're interested in a book on communication that hopefully is very practical, it's got sort of practical ideas in every chapter, then Crafting Connection, Transform How You Communicate with Yourself and Others. Obviously, it's on Amazon, but it's on all the other online bookshops as well, in printed and in e-format. So, that's an easy and inexpensive way to read some of what I've hopefully learned over the years.
I'll stick a link in the show notes for anyone who wants to grab a copy of that anyway. So you should jump along onto that. Well, in which case, all I have to say is, Felicity, thank you for a fascinating conversation. And we'll no doubt speak again, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Nigel. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers. Another great sponsor of the show, it comes in the form of Air Manual. Air Manual is it's a tool for documenting process, which and best practices. It's a company formed by one of my interviewees, Alexis Kingsbury. Essentially, and I kind of summarised why my view of where we see documentation, and my experience has been, people will document something, a process, they'll put it in a Visio diagram that gets loaded onto a SharePoint site or something similar, and then a bunch of that. So then once that diagram's been shared with senior management, they're happy they have a process in the business. But then the detailed procedures underneath it might be in Word documents, just poorly kept and not linked easily and not updated. And what Air Manual does, it allows you to put in it's a tool for doing this kind of thing. You whack it in, the service in there, get in there, put in your process, your flow, and you build it down to as low a level of detail, even to the point of checklists where people can check off they've done it. So it creates that guided checklists, easy to create, easy to maintain, and all in one place. And no one's kind of rooting around to find the SharePoint, and then when you change to new SharePoint services and all that stuff, it's all there. So if you pop along to nigelpriester.com/airmanual, there's a bit more detail there and a link there to click on to go and get. I think they offer a trial and things like that. So it's something that I think can easily reduce the amount of errors, rework, etc. within our organisation. So take a look. I hope you enjoyed the second part of the interview with Felicity. Come back next week for another brilliant guest. See you soon. Bye. So this is my final wrap up. Every week you're going to hear this. You're going to get bored of it, but you can always click next podcast if so. If you have enjoyed it, if you listen to this podcast to the end of this show and you think that was great, I'd love to be able to help Nigel out. There are loads of ways you can do it. The first and obvious way is to share the podcast, send it out to people. If you know colleagues and friends who'd benefit from it, you think they'd enjoy it, just send them the link. Grab one of the links, or send them to www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts. That's www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts, and that will push them over to a Linktree link, and it's got all of the different ways they can consume the podcast. If you are feeling generous and have a big bag of cash, you could grab a copy of one of my books. Obviously, they're available in all the usual places, and print and digital. Again, jump on the website, www.nigelcreaser.com/shop, and that will give you a list of all the different ways that you can contribute and grab copies of the book. Also got links to all my guests' books on there as well, where I get a little bit of a kickback from them. If you are of a sporting mind, I have a number through doing some of my judo and running antics. I've managed to secure a few affiliate links and affiliates there as well. So in there, somewhere in the sponsors page, there's links to those as well. So clicking onto those and grabbing if you're looking to get super fit, then that would be fabulous as well, and I get a little kickback from those. I have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/sundaylunchpm. So again, you can ping something in there, buy me a coffee or whatever. And finally, obviously the most important is coming back, listen again, because the more of you that come back, the more visibility I get, because there's more times that it's downloaded and all the SEO works and things like that. So yeah, that's it. So if you can help me out, I would be much appreciated. If you can't, don't worry about it. Thank you very much. Cheers now. Bye. My latest the latest affiliate that I've got on the show now is Riverside. I use Riverside to do my interviews, Riverside FM. It kind of offers you a whole, if you like, micro studio management producer tooling and goes beyond that. Has a really good free layer. And I've been using it for a while now. I find it really good. When I've had issues, even though I'm not on one of the higher paid levels, the support has been quick, responsive and of high quality, and people keen to help me. The organisation seems really good. The product seems really intuitive, and quality is really good as well. And it's a clever way of doing it is when you're recording through your browsers, so you've not got loads of desktop resources being used compared to some other products that I've used. And what they also do is they stream a lower quality version of it up onto as you're doing the interview, so you're not burning bandwidth while you're doing the interview and potentially impacting on the quality of the conversation. And then at the end, it uploads it, the higher quality from your browser. It's just a really good way of doing it. So if you are thinking of doing a podcast, know someone who's doing a podcast, I would recommend using this tool. I found it really good. Best of the tools that I've tried using to date. And you can get that, nigelcreaser.com/riverside, and that will redirect you to my kickback page on their site, and there I will get a little kickback from them. So take a look. Thanks. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.